It's finally that time. Now that, as most of you know, this car has broken a 10-second quarter mile officially, I can start messing with the engine. So first mod, right off the bat, is a thermostat, something I do on every vehicle. And we all know a cooler engine makes for better times at the track. So a lot of people put in a 180-degree thermostat. In fact, as of right now, there is one in here. And that's because this is just the introduction to this video. So we're going to talk about a 180-degree thermostat. We're going to talk about how to install it, which is probably the first thing we're going to get to. And then we're going to show results. I actually did some recordings of the coolant and oil temps as I was driving. I did it with a stock thermostat, and then I did it again with the 180 installed. And then we're going to kind of talk about what I think about it, the whole deal about, do you need to have a tune to use a 180 thermostat? So with that, let's go back to the install. Thermostat, lower temp thermostat. So the stock one is by, I believe, a 203-degree thermostat. And then a lot of people go down to a 180-degree thermostat. Now, there's quite a few different people that make it. This is a Mishimoto, which I have had. I've actually bought this after I ordered this car, before I even took delivery of it. So I've literally had this sitting in my office for 3 years, waiting for me to hit that 10-cent goal. So this is how it comes just in here. It is one of the more expensive ones. When I bought it, it was $50. And I'll link to everything I use in the description below, as always. So that's all it is right there. And here is, comes in this little Mishimoto bag. And there's your thermostat. And we'll talk about that more in just a second. But also, while I'm in here, we have this thermostat housing right there. And Billet Technologies actually makes a billet one, which looks nicer. And they have different colors. Now, obviously, don't have a color scheme. I'm about racing, not show. But I was curious, since that looks like a chunk of steel and Billet Tech is aluminum, I was curious, is the aluminum one lighter than the steel one? Because, hey, weight reduction, right? So I ordered this Billet Tech, and the water neck with shipping cost me $62. And it just comes in this little box right here. This paper box. We have 2 new bolts. And they wrap it in paper towel inside of the plastic bag. Here is and it is a very nice looking water neck here. And honestly, this feels like a thick chunk of aluminum, so I have a feeling this is not gonna save any weight. But let's put it on the side for now. Okay, so getting to the thermostat, you're not gonna need very much. It's just a couple basic tools. Everything I need is right here. So one thing you'll need is a 13mm socket, because there's only 2 bolts on the housing. They are 13mm, and you'll probably want an extension because it's kind of hard to get to. And if you have a catch can, that kind of gets actually in the way here, so the extension will help with that. And then also, if you are changing this water neck, you will need pliers or vice grips for this little clamp here. If you're not changing a water neck, you don't have to worry about this. You don't need this. For the thermostat, all you need is the 2 bolts for this, and that is it. Also, you want some kind of a bag, a Ziploc bag or something underneath to catch coolant. If you clean everything up, you can reuse the coolant that comes out. I taped it up with some masking tape to help hold the bag up so that when I open this up, all the coolant will spill into the bag. Hope you can see that. I didn't feel the need to really show that on camera. I take back what I said about the pliers. You are going to need pliers because you're going to need to pull this hose off. Now, this is, from what I understand, only on 15s and up. This is where you bleed out the air from the system when you refill it. The older Hemis have a little bleed screw that uses a little Allen wrench, and you just have to take that out. And then as far as like benefits and thoughts and things about a lower temp thermostat, I'll talk about that more later on. Right now, we're mainly going to talk about the install, but one thing I do want to talk about, because a lot of people have no idea what this really is, or have just a basic understanding. So we got the water pump over here, and this hose to the radiator. So the whole point is to keep the coolant circulating through the engine and engine only to help warm it up faster. Because if this was open, the coolant would be going through the radiator, and the engine wouldn't warm up as fast, which is when you get a code. It'll basically be something like engine did not reach operating temp within set time frame or something like that. Now, normally when these go bad, for a lot of people, they go bad to where they just stay closed and then coolant never circulates through your radiator and you overheat. Sometimes the opposite happens. So in my Dodge Avenger that I had, I actually had a faulty thermostat, but it stuck open, so the engine would never actually warm up. Now, also to note, These thermostats have a little rubber O-ring gasket already integrated into it. The old school thermostats, like the ones I used to replace on my old Rams, they do not have a built-in gasket. They actually had a separate thermostat gasket that goes underneath this housing and actually is like the shape of that. So if you're wondering, do you need a gasket? No, these new ones do not need a gasket. This is it right here. Now, the other thing I want to talk about is in these thermostats, there's a little tiny hole up here. You can see there's a pin in it, and this is called a jiggle pin or jiggle valve because it jiggles. Now, this is very important. When you install these thermostats, you want to make sure that this jiggle valve is to the up. So in this case, because it's like this, we'll want it right here. So in a 12 o'clock position, what is this jiggle valve? So if you notice, it has two different ends. This one's like more of a solid circle. This one is not. So basically, when the engine is off, this just kind of drops. And that leaves an opening. There's actually a gap there, air gets through. And when the engine is on, it's pressurized, it pushes it up. And that actually kind of closes that hole a little bit to keep the coolant in. Now, some people actually drill a hole through here, and that'll allow a little bit of coolant to seep through all the time. But really, the purpose of it and why you need to keep it up is because this is to help purge out air. One thing you don't want in your coolant system, and pretty much in a lot of your fluid systems, you don't want air. Air pockets are bad. And then when you're talking about air and liquid, where does air travel? Air travels up. So if there is air in here, it will travel up, and if you can see, this is towards the top, so it'll be up here. And so this little jiggle valve will allow the air to escape and get into the overflow and all that. If you were to put it this way, the air would be up here, this would be down here, and the air has no way to escape. Now, I'll be honest, in old days, I never even worried about it. In fact, some thermostats don't even have this, which is why some people got in the habit of drilling a hole. But yeah, so if you ever see people say, make sure that is at the 12 o'clock position, that is why. I always feel it helps to understand why you're doing something, because otherwise you're like, what's the point? It's meaningless. All right, so with that, we're gonna go ahead and take this off. Now, what we're gonna do, this thermostat should keep some of the coolant in, so once we get this loose up, we're going to pull the old thermostat out and put this one in pretty quick, and then we'll deal with the water neck. All right, I'm going to start with the bottom one since that's a little harder to get. You can kind of see it there. Don't take too much to loosen that up. Try not to scratch up my catch can. So I'm going to remove the bottom bolt first to make it easier so I could see what I'm doing here. Again, after a few turns, you break it loose. They're not torqued down very much. 1. And 2. By the way, sometimes as soon as you get the bolts out, this will start moving. Obviously, you can see it's still stuck there, which is good. So now let's see how much coolant we lose. Oh, yeah, all the way. Also, make sure you have extra coolant because you may lose some and you may need some. I have this Xerox for late model Hemis. I'd prefer to get OEM, so hopefully I don't have to use any. Also, keep an eye on your, just open that up so the air can get in. All right, and we're back after my GoPro overheated. So my tape did not hold up. Bag got too full and the weight just pulled it down. So I had to put a new bag on there. We'll look at the other one in a second. So there you go. All of it is come off. So it looks like you can just move it over here. Here's the old thermostat. Here's the new one. And let's see how much coolant we lose when we pull this out. Man, it's in there pretty good. Okay, actually, I suggest moving that hose down like this so it's still in your bag, because I think I just lost a whole bunch more coolant. Oh man, that's stuck in there pretty good. We're gonna have to get a little flathead here. There we go. I didn't apply a lot of pressure. I don't want to break anything, so just a little bit to pull it out. Oh yeah, that's a lot of coolant that came out of there. As you can see, jiggle valve to the top. Here's the stock OEM one. Here is the jiggle valve on it. Notice on this one, it's a little closer to the center versus out here. There you go. Okay, now with that done, we can pull this inlet off. So what we want to do, pliers, vice grips, whatever you're using. Move that off, and then this is where you'll probably need a flathead to get under there, kind of loosen the rubber up off the seal. There we go. I felt that rubber give. And there it is. There's a little bit of sludge right there too. Not sludge, but some kind of buildup. All right, so now the question I had, this versus this. Oh man, I'm telling you right now, this is heavier. The stock one, 6 ounces. Billet Tech, 7.7 ounces. So Billet Tech is heavier than this, and therefore, because I'm all about weight reduction, not bling, I'm not gonna use this Billet Tech one. I'm gonna put this stock one back on, which means I have this and I have no use for it. So you know what? I think I might do a giveaway for it. All right, now let's just put this back in. When you put in, make sure you kind of have it in the same general direction. Turn it a little bit. First, let me grab. So we got a bunch of coolant here. Bags aren't fully leak proof, so that's how much coolant we caught. I have a feeling we lost a little bit too. So now what I'm gonna do, before I put this clamp back on, I'm gonna put this thermostat housing, bolt it back up. That way that lines up in the rubber. I don't think you need to do it that way, but that's the way I'm doing it. Because if this is misaligned from the bolt holes even a little bit, it'll probably be harder to realign it if this is held in place by that rubber hose. And I know I don't have a torque wrench, I'm not using a torque wrench, but you just want to snug it. You don't want to go crazy with the torque on it. It doesn't take very much. All right, so with that in place, now let me go ahead and grab our pliers and move it back on. All right, make sure it's pretty even on there, and it is, and it's all buttoned up, and that's it. That's all it takes to replace your thermostat. Super easy. Anyone can do it. This is probably, I don't know, my dozenth thermostat I've replaced in a vehicle. So now what we want to do is put the coolant back in. Now, as you can see, actually you might not be able to, there is still a little bit of coolant in here. So it hasn't gone all the way empty, so we're going to open that up. Okay, now when you fill it back up, you do want to bleed out any air that got in there. And since we did lose a lot of coolant there, there's a good chance there is some in there. So these newer ones, get your pliers. And I believe, from what I understand, this line actually goes to the oil cooler. Okay, I'm gonna try this little pick. It's a little sharp, so I gotta be careful with it. I don't want to cut this hose. There we go, wiggled it around, got it through. Okay, so as you can see, this is at the very top of this water pump. So as you fill it up, any air will get pushed up and it'll come out here. So you want to fill until coolant starts flowing out of there. Once coolant's flowing out of here, you're good. And we got coolant flowing out. So with that, just cap my finger, put this hose back on. And actually the seal is way up here, so if I cut it with that little pokey thing, it's fine. So anyway, system bled, put the clamp back. Now we can just pour the rest of this in back into the reservoir. And actually, so far, looks like I didn't really actually lose that much coolant. It looks like the bags did catch most of it, because that line is right back exactly where it was before. But we do need to start the car and let it run and let the coolant circulate through. So that is probably going to go down. I am probably going to need to add a little bit more coolant. I need to anyway, because it's actually at the very bottom of the cold fill range. So before, we were right at the bottom of the cold fill range, but we were at the range line, so we were good. But basically, you want to make sure, you know, get your car warmed up, get everything heated up, get the coolant circulated through, and then check it again once it's cold. And as you can see, we're quite a ways down there. So we're just gonna top it off here. And I did buy some OEM Mopar coolant, and this is the 50/50 pre-diluted, so we don't have to add any water. In case you need some, this is the part number 68163849AB. This is pretty much for all the 2013 and up Chryslers, Dodges. All right, I'm just gonna fill it up to the higher part of the cold fill range just to make sure we have enough, so we're good there. Anyway, quick tip, make sure you check that. Anyway, next step, I'm gonna get in my car. We're gonna go for a drive, so we'll see how the coolant temperature goes, because one of the controversial things is, since these cars have electric fans, so they're just programmed in at what temperature to kick the fans on. So that's the biggest controversial thing, is there's no point doing a thermostat if you don't get a tune, because your fans won't kick on until their preset temp, which is set to the OEM higher temp thermostat. But I'm telling you, it's going to make a difference anyway, and that's what we're going to show. So let's get in the car and check that out. All right, for startup post thermostat install. No codes, there shouldn't be anyway, because the thermostat, either one, is still closed at this point, so there's no reason for there to be a code to start with. All right, let's get on the road and see how it heats up. Coolant temp 123, oil temp 96. Sync it up. Let's go. All right, not too long in, we're at 177, about to hit that 180 mark. Let's see what happens. 181 coolant temp, 152 oil temp. So right about now, that thermostat should be cracking open. There you go, it did crack open. It just dropped to 179. Now, I still expect to go up because there's no fans. Obviously, that's the point of contention for many people. We'll see where it sticks around at. And we'll see once the oil temp gets up to temp 2. So obviously right now, oil temp is going to drag behind the coolant temp and then eventually surpass it. Back for first update, coolant temp is at 188. Again, something I expected, but most importantly, the oil temp has now surpassed the coolant temp. So you see oil temp is now 192. I'm on for a quick update because we just hit some bumper to bumper traffic and we just came to a dead stop after cruising on a freeway for 10-15 minutes. Notice oil temp has now reached the hottest it's been at 206, and our coolant temp is now getting the hottest it's been. It's now hitting 192. By the way, right now it is 89 degrees according to my car outside here in Dallas. It's the last day of July and it's only 8 a.m. So later tonight, I'm gonna come back on after I leave work and it's gonna be over 100 degrees. In fact, the high today is supposed to reach about 106. All right, and now we started moving again. It's back into the 180s, 188, 186. Oil temp 208, so that's a new high for oil temp. Continuing this first drive post thermostat install. Now at this point, this car is heat soaked. We've been driving for 40 minutes, 30 to 40 minutes at least. All our temps are high. Trans temp is at 168. So I fully heat soaked, cruising on a freeway, and you can see the coolant temp 185, oil temp 206, and that's about where the oil temp's been sitting. But that coolant temp, it has been stuck at like 185, and I don't use stuck in a bad way. It has just been 185 the entire time as we're cruising down the freeway, fully heat soaked. No tuning for the fans. All right, here we are getting off freeway. We just hit wide open throttle for a moment. Gave the engine a quick, big blast of heat. You see oil temp just hit 210. Coolant temp 185. That is definitely going to rise though. There it goes, 188. 192 to coolant temp. So far, that's the max we've seen. Now we're moving again. Oh, 194. Back to 192 as we're coming to a stop. We're switching off this cam, going to the other. All right, so we're at my destination and I'm fully stopped. So now I'm just gonna sit and let's see what happens to the coolant temp as we sit here, not moving whatsoever after a hour-long drive, basically. Let's just hang out for a minute, see what happens. It bounced up to 197 and we're sitting here still. You see the clock says 8:40 now. Another minute later, 8:41, and it bounced up to 199. 42, it's at 201, but any moment now fans should kick on. It's 8:47. I've been sitting here for like 8 minutes. And as you saw, the temp got to 201, and pretty much as soon as it 201, I feel like once it started creeping up to where it wanted to flip higher, the fans turned on, and you could hear the fans turned on. And look, we're all the way back down to 185. In fact, I can still hear the fans going right now. But yeah, so the fans actually stock tune. Not only will they kick on at about 201, 202, they'll stay on for a while. It's not like they kick on and then instantly kick off. So as you can see, they kicked on and they're still on right now. Even though the coolant temp is at 185, it has been there for a little bit, the fans are still running and I can hear them running. All right, well, now it's time for me to shut off. I've idled long enough. I need to go to work. We'll be back at the end of work when it's over 100 degrees. All right, so we're leaving work and we haven't even started the car yet, and it thinks it's 120 degrees outside, and the coolant temp's already at 113, oil temp's already at 113. According to my weather app, it's 105 degrees outside right now. So let's go ahead and start this up. Let's go. Let's get on the road. All right, we've already hit 180, 181, 183. We're gonna put this side by side with the stock temp, the test I did last week with the stock thermostat, doing this exact route around this time and pretty close to the same heat. Cruising along, we're pretty much heated up. As you can see, oil temp is at 208. Coolant temp, now it's starting to hold steady at 188. And obviously the outside heat is having an impact on that, because right now it's 105 degrees outside, whereas this morning it was 90 degrees and holding 185. And cars are just going to be running hot when it's over 100 degrees. That's just the way it is. But still, 188 right now. If that was my stock thermostat, it would probably be reading about 206 to 208 right now, I bet. All right, I'm gonna stop to get some gas here in a little bit, and we'll come back at that point to see what happens with these temps. Just filled up, full tank of 94 octane fuel. See, coolant temp is 195. I just glanced down now. I don't know if it was maybe a little higher. Again, we expect that when we're just sitting here, because this is where your argument works about the fans not being on. But once we get moving, we're all good. See, now that we're back on the road, it dropped down to a 190. It's almost back into 180s on this 100+ degree day. All right, that's about all for updates now I have. Whoa, new high, 204. Fans are definitely kicking on, but man, when the fans are just blowing 105 degree heat, there's only so much it can do. Oil temps at 215. Oh, 206. I can definitely hear the fans are on. And even with the fans on, it's having trouble. Just too dang hot. Coolant temp 210. Oh, I just saw oil temp flash at 221. Yeah, this is one of those things where even with the stock thermostat, it would just be open. And this is just one of those times when it would stay open and it would never get down to 203 for it to close. It just wouldn't. So the 180 is not going to be any different. Coolant temp 212, 213. I saw 213. 222, 212. Let's pop the hood. Oh, there's the fans. You hear that? I don't know if you heard that, but they just kicked on, so they weren't even on a second ago when the temps were high, so. Ooh, that's hot. See how hot's that intake? 165 the intake, right there. 147, where the intake air temperature sensor is, 156, 158. The air cleaner, 132 degrees. Look at that. That's why your intake air temperature is so hot. Let's say look at the water pump. 176, how about the head? 196, 195. Valve cover, 188. What else can we ping? Let's look at just the metal. 144. Aluminum hood, 158. Man, that is crazy. All right, let's shut her down. Wait, look at that. Coolant temp down to 194 with those fans, since some fans have been on. All right, turn off. Wow, that is loud. There's that coolant and overflow, 190. I'm gonna leave this hood open. I'm gonna leave my garage open too, let this heat go out. Holy shnikes, hot. It's so hot, like this thermostat test doesn't even matter right now because no one's racing in 106 degree heat. It's ridiculous, it's insane. I'm not gonna race in this heat, so extreme testing, I guess. All right, see you in a bit. Okay, so there you have it. We got our thermostat installed. Everything's working. No codes, no issues whatsoever. And as you could see in those tests, in summertime, 100+ degree heat, you don't have to have tuning to still see benefits from the thermostat. Now again, I'm like a broken record here. I'm not saying that you don't have to get tuned whatsoever and that you don't need the tune or that a tune doesn't help. The tune obviously will help because tuning the fans will help keep the temp lower all the time instead of going up as high as it did as we saw in those previous things. And that's really all I was saying is, yes, the tune is the best, but if you don't want to get a tune, plus the thermostat itself is not going to void your warranty. A tune will. Also, if you're worried, if you have one of those like really strict picky dealers that might try to find a reason, you saw how easy it was to replace. You can just throw your stock one back in. In fact, I keep my stock one with me because these aftermarket thermostats lately have been known to start going out where they get stuck closed. And so as a backup, anytime I go anywhere, especially at the track, I always carry my stock thermostat with me because if something ever happens, it's a very quick and easy fix. Now, one other thing I want to say, all these tests that you saw were to summer, and I realized something. As I was editing the videos, because that was a few months ago, now it's December at this time, and the air's colder, we're not seeing 100 degree heat, and I've noticed something. My temps are still acting pretty much the same, but I've noticed a difference in the fans. I'm not hearing the high-speed fans kick on as much, and they're not kicking on as much as they were in that video, and I realized, wait a minute, duh, you have AC going. AC uses a condenser that sits side by side with the radiator, and that requires airflow going through it. And I was like, wait a minute, that means these fans, when we saw it kick on and stay on for so long when I idled, part of why it did that for so long could have been because the AC was on, and so the car was wanting to get air flowing through the condenser, not necessarily the radiator. And that got me thinking, that whole test all throughout the summer, there probably were cases where it was actually more the condenser telling the car, hey, let's kick these fans on, than it was the radiator, the coolant temp itself. So because of that, I'm going to do 2 more videos on this topic, on this subject. Before I installed the thermostat, I did a stock test when it was about 40, 50 degrees outside, and I was not using any AC. So I'm going to do another test one day when we get a similar temp day, 40, 50 degrees, where I'm not using any AC. Plus, I also want to do one hopefully one day when it gets below freezing, because that's when you'll see the code that I talked about. And then lastly, the third video I'm going to do is going to be a track test video, because really, that's the whole point of this. So anyway, I'm sure I'm going to get some comments on this video because it can be a controversial topic for whatever reason, which is why I wanted to show my gauges. I wanted to show the actual proof. I want to show the actual numbers of what's happening. And then you guys decide and bicker amongst yourself about whether it's worth it or not. The thermostat cost me $50, and if it wasn't some that works, I mean, why would Direct Connection in their stage 1 package include a 180 degree thermostat? Yes, they're tuned, but that aside, some people argue that 180 is too cold and engineers know what they're doing and it's just ruining the engine or causing wear because things aren't warming up enough. Well, if that were the case, why is Direct Connection throwing a 180 degree thermostat and still warranting it? So that's where we're at. So hope this video helped. Hope it showed something, anything. Hope you liked it. As always, like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. See you at the drag strip.